Welcome to the Halo Effect, hospitality stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.
With over 40 years working in the hospitality industry, we've lived some incredible experiences, and as a husband and wife team, we continue to forge our path through business and life that continues to present challenges and opportunities. Through this podcast, we would like to share these experiences and provide some behind-the-scenes insights into the world of hospitality and entrepreneurship.
We hope that this will help anyone who is on a similar journey by sharing how we forged our own path through this incredibly rewarding, yet often challenging industry. Welcome back to the Halo Effect, hospitality stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald. It's a special time of year, and we're here in Halo Towers. What are we here for, Ashleigh?
Well, it's spooky season, so we thought we might dedicate an episode to hospitality horror stories and share a collection of nightmares that we've experienced. But no, we thought that it would be a good opportunity to just jump on and, share our stories. But, we've found that with our friends in the industry and throughout our careers, when you get together, you do kind of share these war stories, and it's a bit of a bonding exercise, isn't it? Comparing notes and building that camaraderie of, each and everyone's experiences.
Who's had the most horrific experiences?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can top that.
And then I suppose on the subject of Halloween, we can see it right across the hospitality industry that these sort of spooky experiences and decoration, and it's becoming, I would say, a little bit more similar to what it's like in the US. And both you and I had spent some time living and working in the States, and Halloween's a major deal over there, isn't it? I know you've had some exciting times in New York during Halloween.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know me well. I my favorite time is to travel for St. Patrick's Day, and New York is incredible for St. Patrick's Day. But number two was Halloween in New York is absolutely incredible, because it is obviously fall, autumn time, and it's beautiful, but the effort they put into Halloween is incredible. And I always remember seeing E.T. for the first time and seeing how amazing Halloween looked. But New York takes it to another level. Huge parade, everyone making an effort, with really elaborate costumes, and all the bars and restaurants giving lots of effort too. I mean, in Ireland growing up, it was more about finding a few black bin bags and putting them on, dressing up as a witch or something scary, and trying to find some bangers and rockets, which were always hard to find, and then having a bonfire. That was kind of how we did it. But yeah, very different in America.
Yeah, and it's definitely, creeping over here, and I was at an event a few weeks ago and actually won a prize, and it was a sort of Halloween themed home decor prize, which included a pumpkin cushion, which I thought Beautiful. That never knew that I needed until I got one, and some pumpkin shaped gin glasses, which I'm looking forward to try. So yeah, it's great to see that evolving, and I know our kids are pretty much as excited about Halloween as they are about Christmas. So yeah, it's very much a theme in our house. But I suppose coming back to hospitality and some of the kind of horror stories, maybe should we start with haunted hotels? And we've both worked in a few sort of historic hotels. And if I maybe jump in with my memory of working at the Broadmoor, which rather than the high security psychiatric hospital in the UK, which you may know, but the 5-star Broadmoor Resort in Colorado Springs, where I worked in the early 2000s. It's a beautiful hotel. It was built by an American entrepreneur, Spencer Penrose, and it was very much inspired by his travels in the early 1900s. Really, really quirky hotel. It's welcomed guests from presidents to various Hollywood luminaries, and I had the pleasure of working there for a year as part of my work placement.
For fans of the Forbes travel guide, it's unique, one of the only hotels that has 3 5 stars.
It is.
So 5-star rating for the hotel, for the restaurant, and for the spa.
I'm pleased to see my influences
permeated
through.
Yeah, I'll take credit for that.
But Spencer Penrose was very eclectic in his range, and there's some amazing stories around exotic animals that he brought to the hotel, and there's a secret stash of thousands of bottles of Prohibition era booze that were, smuggled away in tunnels, and just some incredible stories. But for many years, he lived there with his wife, Julie Penrose, and they lived in a suite in the hotel, which has now become part of the suite's inventory. And I know that whenever we would have to do show rounds or housekeeping were cleaning the rooms, or you were working a night shift, there was always tales of, people sort of seeing what they described as Spencer and Julie from either the clock tower or in the suite themselves. We always used to sort of scare each other with our stories on the night shift. But it was, I didn't see anything personally, but it was, always good to just tell those stories and get a bit scared.
We both worked in Turnberry as well. And I mean, Turnberry was, because it's in a sort of a fairly remote area of South Ayrshire, there was a lot of sort of multi-generational people who would have worked in the hotel. I remember when we were there, there was one lady from housekeeping who was literally born on the site and worked there her entire life. So I think her grandkids were everyone was working there from multi-generations. But she also had so many memories and scary memories as well. And certain things would set her off, like certain pictures in certain rooms that she thought were haunted. So she, when employees were maybe staying over on a staff night, or for whatever reason they were staying over, she would often walk into their rooms at night and move pictures around, thinking they were haunted and they wouldn't want to have them there, but actually just having someone walking into their room and moving is probably scary enough.
Scary enough.
I don't think she ever did that with paying customers, but with employees, it's
definitely, and
pretty scary.
And because it was relatively remote, there were a number of employees that would stay on site. I remember hearing lots of stories of kind of noises in the night and actually it would just be this member of the team just kind of going around changing pictures and things in the dead of night. But great memories. And I suppose, a hotel, it's such a representation of everyday life in many ways and in a really concentrated way. So you've got things that happen in daily life that you need to deal with. And what happens when guests check in but don't check out?
Well, it's as you say, it's like a concentrated experience, and the awful things when maybe guests pass away, or whatever might happen in their lives. It is something that makes us really, I suppose, people who are not necessarily trained for dealing with those kind of situations are thrown in those situations just with maybe some first aid training or something like that. And I'm lucky in many ways that I've never had to sort of try and save someone. I have had a few situations where someone has already passed away in their sleep, and you kind of go through the motions and you do certain things, but there's nothing really you can do to help the situation. But it is, it's definitely one of those war stories that you share with people, because most people that I know who've worked in hospitality for 20 plus years have unfortunately come across that kind of thing. And it is always sad, and it is always makes you really think. It puts you in a different place, and it's not something that everyone gets to sort of, or has to experience at work. Normally, it does happen, of course, but it is, we've always been offered sort of support and things like that from the hotels
I think that's
working with whenever something like that happens.
Really important to know. There's training, there's support. I think very much recognise that you will come across many different situations, and trying to proactively have plans and scenarios and training in place. And we've done lots of fire and safety training, and training, especially when we worked in London actually, and the terrorist rating was relatively high, that we would do identification of potentially if there was a bomb, or if there were potential terrorism suspects, and what the sort of plan was and what's the sort of crisis plan.
Sort of high alert, wasn't it? It was sort of
really high alert. Oh gosh, I do remember one incident where it was in the sort of early 2000s, and it was around the time of the Iraq War, and we'd had some enhanced training around, identifying suspicious packages and sort of what to do in potential sort of situations of terrorism and things, and I'd just been to show a guest to their room and got up in the lift in the Central London Hotel, came down in the lift and noticed there was a suspicious looking package. So I immediately started to recall this training that we'd only had about a week earlier, and I thought, well, you needed to be able to describe what the package was, and my next call was going to be the security team. So I sort of bent down and tried to just sort of touch it with the side of my hand, just to try and work out, what shape it was, so I could really describe this package.
Very brave, actually.
And the package was really warm, so I started to get really, really worried. So as soon as I got out of the lift, made a beeline for the first telephone, rang security. They came up, cordoned off the area, kind of very
evacuate the hotel at this point?
We didn't evacuate the hotel at this point, but we were very discreet in sort of keeping the guests away, and they went in and investigated, and then a few moments later they announced that it was a baby's nappy in a bag, so get all sorts.
Well,
but it was just
terrorism
exactly. But yeah, just those just literally on high alert for everything. And I know that you've had some situations where, there's been some scary things going on in the lobby.
Yeah, one interesting one was over the time of the royal wedding in, when was it? 2011.
2011.
We had I was in Knightsbridge, so very close to all the happenings going on, and everyone again on high alert in central London in 2011, and still now, obviously. But there was a Vodafone, I think it was Vodafone, I don't think we need to tag them in it, but there was a mobile phone engineer certainly on the roof, making some adjustments to some of the technology that was on the roof, and he was very surprised, as we were in the lobby when they ran past, when a fully armed squad of anti-terrorism police with machine guns and the whole shebang came running through the lobby straight up onto the 17th floor,
storming the building,
and getting him to lie down on the ground and put down his fibre optic tools. But that kind of stuff you just have to be kind of aware of and ready for. But we've had, unfortunately, you see the sort of videos of it still sort of happening, but the sort of motorcycle gangs as well.
Yeah.
In London, most of these horror stories are coming from London. Surprise, surprise. But doing night shift, I think, is one of those times where you see a little bit of everything, maybe a little bit slower, but you have a little bit more time to sort of see what's going on. But it's also a little bit more pressure on the security side of things. And we were, in one of the hotels I was working in, were victim of one of those motorcycle gangs that was coming in trying to steal jewellery. There was a jewellery shop in the lobby of the hotel, so it was deemed a target by these guys, and they came in on their motorbikes with the helmets still on, flashing sledgehammers, swinging sledgehammers at members of the team, missing them by inches and taking chunks out of walls. Guests hiding under a piano in the bar, just trying to stay back. Me telling one of the supervisors to jump into the safe room, which is literally just a room with a safe in it, not necessarily safe, but as safe as anywhere, while calling police and calling security saying, I think there's someone in the lobby trying to take something. And that is probably something that only takes about 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes, but really does stay with you. It feels like a very long time.
And it's such an immediate reaction. And did you feel that was it quite instinctual what you did, or was there a sort of almost a protocol that you had in your mind that you knew you needed to enact really quickly, or how did you react? It
wasn't unheard of to happen in hotels, because I think quite a few hotels and jewellery shops had been hit, but I think it was quite clear to everyone that people aren't the target, are they, in those situations? No one wants to hurt anyone. They will if they're getting in the way of them stealing something.
Yeah.
So I think it was very much stand back and observe. And I think that's always been training with whatever hotels I've been in. And I did a security job once in America. Did you know that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of your
It was
many jobs.
one of my 7 jobs when I had in America. It was very much about observing. Observing and reporting, try and get as much information. But I wasn't going to stand out there and take notes. I was just going to watch it on video camera and things like that, and just to kind of tell what was going on. And then when you were making a report to police and things like that, you're just sharing as much information as you can and hoping that they get caught down the line. But no one is trying to be a hero.
The hero, exactly.
In that sort of situation. I think you're right, that it's very important to understand that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because you then turn sort of an interesting story into a really horrific one if something goes seriously wrong, someone gets hurt.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I know we've probably zoned in on London, but it being such a busy and dynamic city, I suppose there's always lots going on. But I just wanted to kind of chip in with an experience that I had not long after I'd moved to Thailand, which I know I like to talk about a lot. Apologies in advance. But I was...
Should have a klaxon go off every time you mention Thailand.
Yeah, I know.
When I lived in Thailand...
Yeah, exactly. So there's... I was director of marketing communications, but as part of our role, everyone needed to do duty manager shifts, which was great experience and gave me a real insight into the operation of this huge resort. My first duty manager shift was over Chinese New Year, which is a big deal in Phuket. And we get a lot of visitors from China, from Singapore, and the hotel was full. So it was probably around 1,400 guests in-house. And so, day started out well. I'd done my rounds, kind of making sure that everything was going really well. And then I got this alert that I needed to come round to the situation room. I was like, where's the situation room? Oh, it's the security office. Okay, right, what's going on? And I was in Thailand some years after the Boxing Day tsunami, but the impact of that was still very much being felt, and there were many of my colleagues and friends who had some personal experiences around that. And the whole of the island and the whole of the region were very much on high alert. And there had been an earthquake in Sumatra, in the same place in Banda Aceh where the Boxing Day tsunami had resulted from. And the alert was that there was an earthquake. We were on standby for a tsunami warning. So I, hadn't had any real specific training at this point in regards to this. So I remember thinking, right, well, I'll just ring the hotel general manager. It'll be fine. I'll just ring him. He was on the golf course. This better be good, Ashleigh. So explain to him what's happened. He's like, oh, it's fine. We get them all the time. They're fine. No, that's fine. It's this kind of earthquake that you want to look out for. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't know that, but thank you very much. Back to your, par 5. Just remember that I didn't sleep that night because I was thinking, oh my gosh, if I need to evacuate this hotel, we need to get to high ground. What is my route? And that I really did a follow up to say, look, we really need to be well trained and informed. And there were people, of course, who were working that weekend that could have led the evacuation and everything. But it was a real eye opener to me in regards to that. And then just talking about natural disasters, and just as I was talking about this, being reminded, but we went to Myanmar when it was open for tourism, which would have been in about 2013. So you'd not had many experiences of being in Southeast Asia. You'd been to Singapore, and then we had made a plan. To Singapore Airport. So yeah, fair to say you'd not had huge cultural experiences of the region. And we'd made holiday plans to go back to see friends in Phuket and travel around Thailand. And we'd said, well, look, while we're there, let's go across the border into Myanmar. And we had just over a week there and visited the most beautiful place. I'm so pleased that we went. But there was one particular evening, we were staying on Inle Lake, which is just the most beautiful place on this wooden stilted kind of bungalow. And in the middle of the night, the bed started like bashing from side to side in the room, and we were being thrown around the room, and there was an earthquake. So I was getting I was ready to immediately evacuate, getting our passports and our American dollars out of the safe and kind of making, ready to make a run for it. Whereas I think you were like, oh, well, I'm just going to go back to sleep because actually if we do need to evacuate, I want to be well rested. And then the next
calm in these situations.
Yeah. And the next morning I kind of eagerly went to the sort of reception. I was like, oh my God, what was that in the night? Was that an earthquake? They're like, yeah, it was. But you don't need to worry about the earthquakes that go from side to side. It's the ones that go up and down that you really need to worry.
The same earthquake training as your general manager in Thailand.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh.
Don't worry about that kind of earthquake.
Exactly. But yeah, it was, I need to remember to stay more calm, clearly. But yeah, and so back to hotels, in the UK, and I suppose from a horror story, from maybe a PR disaster, let's say, got a few of them, maybe not go into all of them, but I do.
You probably have to not mention the hotels.
No, I'll keep the names out. But I do remember in my early days of hosting journalists. I just had a press trip that just did not go very well. And, hosting a group from Germany, and they'd come over for a weekend, and, we had this amazing itinerary planned for them. And we had booked them a sort of specific accommodation that they were all sort of staying together in a certain area of the hotel. But a particular journalist really wanted to stay in a different part of the hotel. And, I sort of explained that we were on a group trip, and this was, we were showcasing these particular rooms. And anyway, it kind of just didn't really start off on the best footing. But we'd gone out that afternoon, had a lovely afternoon, lovely evening meal. And then I came back to, just ensure that all of the journalists, got safely into their rooms. And as this journalist, who wasn't particularly happy with where they were staying, went to go into his room, he came out and saying, "There is a man in my bed." I was like,
heard that one before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he travelling with you? What's the situation here? And as he was telling me this, I just heard these kind of clinking of French doors being opened, and this man in the bed had bolted out of the French doors, but he'd also taken some of the clothes of the man, the journalist, that he'd had set out ready to play and go out the next day. So he ran off, and I'm sort of left with this situation. I remember calling the duty manager at the time just to come and kind of help and try and get to the bottom of the situation. And yeah, as it transpired, there was another group of people who'd been very lively through the afternoon, had kind of got a bit confused as to where they were staying, and were very insistent, and were able to gain access to this room thinking that it was their room. And had gone to sleep, but how they thought to take the clothes or anything else like that.
Cold.
And I remember, going into the bar, and this other group that were there. And, they just thought it was the funniest thing. And the journalist wasn't particularly happy, but we did get them up into the room that they did want to have originally. So in a way, everyone was happy, and we all made our apologies. But I just remember at the time thinking, oh God, I just want the ground to swallow me up. This press trip could not go any sort of bad, any worse. But, you live and learn. And I think, it was a good lesson for the operations team around that qualification of who was staying in that room. So it did highlight some, challenges and opportunities. But yeah, I just remember thinking, oh God, no, I just want to go home now.
It does happen in hotels that people end up getting into rooms that they shouldn't be in. It really does. And there's lots of different reasons for it. Sometimes someone will check someone in and they don't actually physically check them into the PMS system or whatever might be there, and then someone else will check the same person in, or there may be some sort of error, or someone's moved rooms and they've not done it properly, or it's human error that does it. And sometimes there's obviously security issues, and there's all sorts of reasons that's bad and dangerous. But in hotels, it happens, and it's really, really important that those stories are told, and you try and learn from them, and not just learn from your own mistakes, but learn from your colleagues' mistakes, and have processes in place to avoid it happening, because it is one of the most embarrassing
Yeah, it's I know. It just just
people getting into rooms when the housekeeper is still cleaning or something like that.
I know,
kind of
it
thing.
feels like sort of unavoidable.
It can be. It's just the more rooms you have, the more risk of it is, more risk there is of it happening, and it happens, and you. But it's always an opportunity to recover the situation as well.
Yeah, and kind of look at your processes. And I suppose there's lots of stories that happen in the hotel, but there's other things that happen out with the hotel that will have an impact on your guests. And again, Klaxon, when I worked in Thailand, there were quite a lot of protests because, the Thais do love to, show their opinions through protest. So there was quite a lot of airport closures in Bangkok and in Phuket, which had a massive impact, obviously, on people being able to get in and out of the country. So we had situations where we had guests who were trying to get home, guests who were trying to come to the resort, that we needed to ring around hotels and find them places on the island, and sort of bidding for guests to stay sort of in various different places. There was also a full closure of the resort because of a protest with team members as well, which was very peaceful, but it was just very disruptive. And I think from our perspective and the guest perspective, it did feel quite intimidating because it was essentially a protest, but it was very much just taking the stand, and I think the sort of protection of the workforce and unions and things were quite strong. So there was the right to protest was very much just sort of given a place. So lots of very big learnings and stories to tell, and then coming back to hotels, you are dealing with a lot of money, and I think obviously in these days it's very much digital now, and not many people sort of carry cash around, but certainly back in the day when we used to work in reception and things like that, you were dealing with a lot of cash, weren't you? And you were dealing with guests who had really big bills, and you needed to make sure that they were able to pay those big bills, but not sometimes they didn't always have the funds there and then to pay, did they?
I mean, ultimately hotels are businesses, right? And it can often get put aside, especially in the sort of luxury hotels. It's like, oh, they're good for it, they'll be fine, it's fine. But there was a couple of occasions. I mean, cash flow is cash flow, right? And so whether or not you're a billionaire or whatever it is, you still need to have the money and the funds to do it. I've had people spend their entire budget for the year, or for the summer, which I think was like £1 million or something like that. Some very wealthy gentleman was given on his American Express card for his summer in London, and he spent a lot of it in the casino, and ended up having to. Trying to hand me the keys for his Ferrari, saying, "Oh, it's good. I'm good for it. Here's the keys for my Ferrari." And at the time, I didn't have a driver's license, so if I had, or if I knew how to drive, it would have been very tempting to try one of those Ferris Bueller's day off kind of a moments. We go for a drive around central London in a Ferrari. That's a joke, but there, obviously we can't be taking keys of cars. It's not gonna pay our bills. But the best excuse I ever had from anyone for running out of money was from a Middle Eastern oil company, who I was chasing, that I think owed 7 figures. I think it was something like that, 7 figures for a recent stay, and they were a bit slower to pay than they normally are. And we're, okay, it's Michael, can you give them a call? Okay, I'll give them a call, and I speak to the contact there, and they say, I'll follow it up, I'll try and find out what's going on. They spoke to their finance director or whoever it was, and they came back with the best excuse I've ever had, and what they said was, those recent Somali pirates that have been taking over oil tankers and the off the coast of Eritrea. I'm like, yeah, I've seen that. Well, one of those was ours, and we've had to send a helicopter with bags of cash, $3 million or something like that, bags of cash, and drop them off. Is it okay if we pay you next week? I'm like, that that's pretty good excuse. I mean, I absolutely, I can't authorize that. I'm like, yes, absolutely, that's authorized. But I'm like, yeah, can you please definitely give me a call next week and let me know? And they did pay. They were good for it. But I think when you're dealing with certain clientele, there is a trust, and there needs to be a trust going both ways. Whereas there's lots of hotels, if you're staying here and you don't pay up front before you even stay the night, you're made to feel very unwelcome. Here in some hotels in central London, especially with Middle Eastern guests, to be like, oh, it's okay, I've shook your hand.
Yeah, exactly.
I've shook your hand.
Much more about the relationship.
What more do you need than that? And I was like, yeah. So balancing that in terms of building the relationship and the understanding and the trust alongside your very serious financial obligations to actually get paid this £1 million is a very delicate thing to do.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure we could talk for hours about various horror stories, and they are just a collection of ours. But we'd love to hear from all of our listeners and friends in the industry of theirs. And as you say, I think it's something that we really bond and share those stories.
Thank you for listening to The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.
Hope that this has helped fellow hospitality people and entrepreneurs who may be on a similar journey.
If you would like to suggest any topics for future episodes, ask us a question, or would like to join us on a future episode of the podcast, then please get in touch. We've linked up our contact details in the show notes.
Don't forget to like and subscribe or follow The Halo Effect on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. We look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode of The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.